Welcome to a soccer parenting discussion with Lori Lindsey, a retired women's national team and professional player and co-owner of a gym in the Washington, D.C. area. We're going to talk today about your path to the national team. So tell us a little bit about your path to the national team, getting invited to your first camp, all those emotions that went into that.
Yeah, I'm originally from Indiana, so I don't think anybody would say that that's a soccer hotbed by any means. But we've had some good players come out of there. But at the time, in the mid 80s, when I was growing up and started getting into soccer, it definitely wasn't a soccer hotbed. But my first real experience with the national team was probably around my freshman year in high school. And we had kind of like U14 national teams, but they didn't have any like camps or anything. It was just like you're kind of named to a team, and they were starting to identify players. And then around my freshman years, when they had the U16 national team, and so myself and like Abby Wambach, we all went in, and yeah, I was in Chula Vista, California, at the Olympic Training Center there, and I mean, I loved it because at that point in time, I was starting to take soccer pretty seriously, training on my own and doing stuff, like knowing that I wanted to continue to improve. And so that was just like another step that, okay, my hard work is paying off, and it was going to give me a chance to like see where I was against some of these like best players in the country. So yeah, I mean, it was April Heinrichs, who used to be the coach of the women's national team, like during the 2003, 2004 World Cup and Olympics. She was our U16 coach, and I mean, it was pretty intense. Like I didn't have an environment like that prior. And I mean, we had fitness, and I think they were really just trying to show all of us young athletes like what their expectations were at the highest level with the full national team, and then like wanting to set us up for success and say like, okay, this is what it's going to be like. It's going to be hard work, and so if you're enjoying this, stick with it. But if you don't, then like this is what it's going to be like, and it's not going to be easy. So,
Were you going back to your like room at night just like full of stress, or were you excited? Were you, I mean, pretty fired up?
No, fired up. I remember being stressed because randomly so they sent us all this Nike stuff, gear before the camp, which is awesome because it's your first experience of getting all this free stuff, and you're like, yeah, this is amazing, I've made it at 14. And so but like I remember packing. We were going to be there for like 7 or 10 days, and I packed to the brim. I'm like, I'm going to California from Indiana. My bag was just like busting at the seams, this huge Nike duffel bag. And randomly, some woman on my flight, who I later found out was this like competing bodybuilder or something, had the exact same bag. And so when we got off the plane, I'm like searching for my bag, and I see a Nike bag come around, but I knew it wasn't mine, even though it was the same one. And the lady had taken mine and not hers. So I didn't have luckily I had traveled with my soccer boots on the flight. So I had those, but it's like I had no other change of clothes.
Oh my gosh.
So I remember being stressed out about that, and like, great, my first trip. Here I am, it's hot as hell, I'm sweating, and I have like nothing really to change into.
Oh.
But besides being stressed out like that for the first few days, no, I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like, because when I was growing up, never felt like an outcast, but I just remember having like all these like focus and goals to play soccer. And while my friends were competing in sports, didn't feel the same.
Mm-hmm.
Like here I was trying to train on my own in my backyard. And so when I went to this camp, it felt like, oh, here's all these other players that have been working hard as well, kind of understand the process that you go through to get there, training with your club teams. And so it felt kind of like, oh, here's a group of females that have a similar path.
That's great.
And yeah, so in that way, it was awesome.
How were you different when you left than when you arrived?
Yeah, I think I was invigorated to go back and all right, these are the things I learned. This is some areas that they told us that they want to see in players or that they are looking for in players. And also just kind of taking a step back and looking at what areas I was already good in and how I can continue to improve on those, and then bring up some of my weaknesses and how I matched up against other players. And not necessarily in comparison, but just like, okay, I'm competing against myself. I want to continue to improve. So I felt this like sense of like always after those camps, like, all right, go back to the drawing board. Like, this is where I want to be at this level. So how can I stay there?
That's great. Did you always dream of being on the national team, or was there something that happened that was sort of a catalyst moment for you? Or when did you decide that's what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I remember early on. Well, I started playing because my brother Chris, who's a couple of years older, played. And so it was just easier for my parents to truck both of us around. So I was, till like 10 years old, I was playing on all boys teams, a couple years older than me. But yeah, I think I would say 10, 11, I absolutely knew that, like, I saw the 91 Women's World Cup. My dad bought me this VHS. It was like a highlight reel of that. I was like, oh, love this. This is amazing.
That was hard to get those games, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's hilarious. It's just like, and then, obviously it's in China. Yeah. And so it's like nothing was really in English on this VHS, but it was like this awesome music, and I would just watch the highlights of it. Yeah, it was cool. That's cool. And we'd get Soccer America magazine. At that point in time, it was a newspaper. Yeah. And I would like be obsessed with reading all the stories about the women's player and the college game and UNC. Yeah. When I would go to the national team camps, I remember like just taking notes and like thinking, okay, how can I leave here, go back and like apply this to my game?
So do you think that mentality that you had is what all of your teammates had? Or do you think that mentality is necessarily a requirement? I'm just wondering, because some kids might not have that desire to watch soccer all the time, or do you think that's a requirement of being on the national team?
No, I don't think it's a requirement. I think that I think you get everyone has different stories, right, at the national team level. Everyone's journey is different. But I think there are some common traits, some common themes. Mm-hmm. And by no means, I think people discover and take things seriously at different ages and realize, okay, actually, this is my true passion. Like, for instance, here's me who's 5'5", 5'6" player who, yes, absolutely, somebody looked at me, they would be like, you're way above average athlete, right? Mm-hmm. And especially in, like, Indiana. Yeah. But, like, when you start comparing me at the highest level playing in a World Cup to Sydney Leroux's speed or Abby Wambach's, like, height and, like, heading ability, and, just all these players, Christy Rampone and her speed and, like, playing for 20-some years on the national team. It's, like, the smallest details separate people. So for me, I realized that early on. Like, I would rank myself up there in terms of my skill and, like, my ability to play passes with anybody. But, like, we rave about athleticism here in the United States. That's what separated us. So for me, I knew that was going to be considered a weakness, even though I was above average. But,
What advice do you have? Because this makes me think about, all the kids that we have out that are playing now, and with our expanded programming that we have with our national teams. We have kids that are getting into getting invited to training centers at the age of 12 and 13. We have kids that are, actually going to national team camps at 13, 14, 15 and older. What's your advice to the kid that gets invited to the training center, goes a couple times, is 14 years old, goes to a national team camp, but doesn't get invited back?
Yeah, to be honest, I think nothing wrong with that. I think, in fact, I think that's what I love about sports is, like, you get tastes of success and you also learn about failure and, for lack of a better word, rejection at some point in time. But that's okay because that builds resiliency. And I think that allows you as a kid to decide what's really important to you. So just to answer your question, I don't think that's a necessary mentality. That's just what I had in me. Mm-hmm. And that's what I needed in Indiana, I think, to continue to rise to the top and, like, prove myself against these other players around the country. But it also, I had that drive. But, like, Abby Wambach, here she is, like, this incredible athlete. She didn't really start digging deep into, like, being like, all right, I can make this a career until, I think our senior year in college.
Yeah.
And that's just that's her path, though. I don't think everybody I couldn't have gotten away with that, if that's just one person. But
right.
I think it's, listen, there's 23 to 30 players that make a World Cup or Olympic team, right? And so, I mean, that's like less than 1%.
Yeah.
And which is phenomenal. But at the same time, with billions of people playing, the chances are not huge. And that's just the reality of it. So I think like there's nothing wrong because with like going into these camps necessarily and then not getting invited back. I mean, I think it just, okay, it's like, if you want to get invited back, then what can you do? I think it starts to allows kids to take ownership. Do you want to contact a coach? Do you going to put a little bit extra work in,
Yep.
Are you, and then if you don't want to, totally fine as well.
Or like, if you're not athletic enough to, maybe you get invited in and you're at the very top of your age in your area, but on the grand scale of things, you're just not good enough. And there's nothing wrong with that. I feel like these kids oftentimes are having this mentality of they're failing when they really haven't even begun. And,
And I think you bring up a great point. Like you could be amazing in your area. That's a small area in this whole entire country where they're identifying players. And it doesn't mean you're not good. It doesn't mean you're less than or anything. It just unfortunately that's the way it is, But I think it's amazing. I think that's why sports are great because they teach us lessons, and you have to decide how you're going to apply those lessons.
Exactly. Well, I know the path is a narrow one, and so it's exciting to talk to you and that you had your experiences and that you made it. We all have a lot to learn from athletes that did succeed and ones that didn't in our journey as we're parenting our kids and trying to support them in their goals and their dreams. So thanks for taking the time to talk to us today.
Yeah, thank you.